Rabbi Friedman, great honor, great pleasure to welcome you in our weekly, wishful thinking, in our weekly show. Thank God it's Tuesday. And the topic that I wanted to raise for a very, very long time, but unfortunately, life has presented so many different other topics that I kind of pushed it off. But thank God life is a little bit more calmer this week than usual. At least I think so. Things kind of, so we have a little bit of this breather, and I would like to use it to speak about a topic that I wanted to raise for the longest time, and that's about the role of women in Judaism, in the world, and what has happened in the last century with the women's movement, with feminism, with equality. Has feminism caused gender confusion that we're living through these days, nowadays?
Things are calmer.
Well, a little.
You have beautiful weather today.
Not bad.
Well, they were predicting a storm. Instead, you have 50 degrees.
Yeah.
Not bad, not bad. So, is feminism responsible for the gender confusion? Absolutely. Not the only responsible party, but certainly one of them. It almost seems like somebody is trying to make us look ridiculous. Huh? For many, many years now, somebody has been pushing the liberal agenda to where it sounds completely absurd. Like if you wanted to make fun of liberal values or leftist values, just take it to its extreme ridiculous conclusion. If we are totally free, if we can determine our own lives, if we have freedom of choice, then why do you have to be female? It's such an absurdity. And when people take it seriously, somebody is sitting back and laughing their heads off about this.
It would be good to say that one day we'll look back on this and laugh, but those days are not quite here yet. But feminism started out with such a good idea about equality of economic, social equality. Those are all wonderful ideas. However, how did it get to this point?
This is the problem when you can't speak in purely objective moral terms. When you don't believe that morality has a power, that if you claim that something should be done in the name of morality, it will happen. But not believing in morality means that if you want anything to happen, you have to make it personal, because nobody's going to pay attention to the morality of the issue. They'll only pay attention if you get hysterical and take it personal and say you're terribly offended. So everything has to be reduced to personal discomfort. What is immoral about not paying equal wages? Because you make women feel inferior. Really, is that the issue? You know how many ways you can make women feel inferior? If that's what you're out to do? You know how many ways a woman can complain that she is being made to feel inferior? Endless. People are very smart. Soon children are going to pick up on this. You know how many ways children can accuse you of abusing them? They're brilliant. So you can reduce or turn anything into abuse. Well, I find that abusive. Well, I didn't do anything. Exactly. When you don't do anything, I find that abusive. It's ridiculous, right? But it all shows how desperate we become when we don't have moral reality, moral fiber, moral strength, moral clarity. And we have to replace it with this pathetic victimization. No, don't do that. You make me a victim. Don't shoot me, then I'll be victimized. Is that why I shouldn't shoot you? So it becomes really absurd. And feminism did that. If women demanded equal pay on the grounds that it's the moral thing to do, they would have either gotten it or not gotten it, but they wouldn't have created this disaster. And the same with civil rights, and the same with everything else that is moral-based. But we don't believe that moral has any value or any strength or any power. So we resort to other kinds of arguments. Equality, microaggressions. We have to victimize ourselves in order to get what morally is due to us.
Rabbi Friedman, but it did get women to a certain point. I mean, the very recent study has been made that in America, Asian women have surpassed white male, almost surpassed white male in capability in their earnings capabilities. And basically, so this movement did get us to some point, but it just got everything else out of whack.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure what brought about this improvement. Economics or politics? If you are indispensable to the industry, you will get paid more. Has nothing to do with feminism. In fact, it has nothing to do with being female. It's economics.
What about
not sexual politics?
But politics as well. We have about 20 women presidents or ministers or super high positions in different countries of the world. And how would Judaism look at it? Is that a good thing for women to be the rulers of certain countries, or not so much?
Look, nobody ever suggested that a human being with talents should ignore or squash those talents. We had women prophets, we had women judges. If you have the gift, if you have the ability, nobody is going to discourage you from using your talents. Doesn't make any sense, and it would never be accepted anyway. Like somebody once said, is it written that a woman has to obey her husband? And the rabbi said, if it was written, would it help? It wouldn't help. You can't force things on people like that. You can't keep talented people down. It's not going to work. And why should you keep them down? The question is, what is your value structure? What do you value most? What is second? What is third? And what is least? So if you talk about what we value in women, We don't value the fact that a woman can do what a man can do. We value in women what only women can do. In other words, you celebrate your womanhood, not the fact that you can be a man. That's insulting.
Well, it kind of became insulting to women to stay home and have children.
That's ridiculous. That is so evil. To denigrate motherhood, to denigrate babies, to denigrate life, that's insane. I mean, that's a sickness in its own. But the interesting thing is, women are valued and women gain self-respect when they can do what men do. Actually, what do men do? Oh, men were heads of companies, they're CEOs and so. That has nothing to do with being a man. There's nothing masculine about running a company.
Power?
In other words, you have two men. One has a deli shop in the corner on the street, and the other one is running a multinational corporation. Who's more of a man? This is not how you measure a man. There's nothing masculine about being rich. There's nothing masculine about being a CEO. So it doesn't make you a man. So when a woman can do it, does it make her a woman? Doesn't even make her a man. It's neutral. Running a company is a sign of intelligence, not of gender.
Rabbi Friedman.
So when a woman becomes a CEO, she's not stepping into a man's world. There's nothing masculine about being smart, capable. So if you want to talk gender, then let's talk gender.
Rabbi Friedman, but women becoming a CEO will interfere with family life. For sure it will.
And it does for a man too. I think to some degree, women decided to go into the workforce and leave the home, not because they hated being mothers. They hated being single mothers. Men were never home. So they were raising their children by themselves for all practical purposes. So when men became obsessed with their careers, women became single mothers. No fun being a single mother. So women put up with it for a while, and then after a while the women said, look, if you're not going to be a father, I'm not going to stay home and be a single mother.
So the kids became orphans?
Yeah. So it was wrong, terribly wrong, for men to become obsessed with their careers. That's not masculine. It's not Jewish. It's not noble. It's not moral. What is it? Arrogance? Greed? What is it? How and when did the family become an annoyance and an interference with your career, with your upward trajectory? When did it become less important to take care of your kid's boo-boo than to sit at a meeting where you might get a promotion? That's twisted. So then finally men realized it's really bad. and they decided to go back home. And they found themselves being single fathers. This whole thing is just such a total mess. So in our value system, in Jewish life, no, we don't encourage little girls to dream of becoming CEOs. We don't encourage boys to do that, to think that way. We encourage people to think of family. We encourage people to think of motherhood, of fatherhood, community, scholarship, wealth. Wealth is wonderful. You don't raise your children to be rich. That's not a value. It's not masculine, it's not feminine, it's not Jewish, it's not holy. What is it? So on your value scale, that should be at the bottom. If everything else is in place and you have a really good life, then being rich would be very nice. Putting that at the top of the list, you've lost your humanity.
So I guess we all have lost our humanity lately. Most of us.
That's a secular society. A secular society loses its humanity. Now, people think a secular society has lost contact with God. It's worse. A secular society loses contact with humanity.
Rabbi Friedman, the Jewish world has been snubbed by the secular society for the longest time for its values of family. And a very, very popular opinion is that women are second-class citizens in religious homes. Please say something in regards to that.
I think we once spoke about this. How does a society or a culture discriminate? If you develop a value and you promote a value, the highest, most respected value in this culture is the ability to fight. If you are a warrior, if you are strong in battle, if you are victorious at war, you have all the respect. You're at the top of the totem pole. However, women are not that good at it. So you have permanently excluded women from your highest value. That's discrimination. That's evil. If you're going to promote a value, it has to include everybody. If you exclude people from what is most precious and what is most valued, that is horrible discrimination. But if war is at the bottom of the totem pole, the last thing anybody wants is to go to war. But men are better at it. So when there is a war, you send the men to war, not the women. That's discrimination? No, that's respect for women. Women are more indispensable than men to a society. So if anybody is going to risk their lives, it should be the men. So why is that not discrimination? Because going to war is of no value. It's just a necessary evil. So if I exclude you from a necessary evil, are you offended? Of course not. You're relieved. So if you set up a value that excludes some segment of society, you're discriminating and it's not nice. In fact, if you want to take it to the extreme, if you're setting up a value for your community, for your culture, for your society, and it doesn't include children, it's not a kosher plan. Your highest value must include all members of society. It's your highest value. How can you exclude anybody from it? And if people are naturally excluded from it, how did that become your highest value? You got bad values. In Jewish life, the highest value envelops and includes every member of society. No one is above it, and no one is below it, and no one is left out. Not even children. So there is no artificial created separation. Well, there's the adult world, and then there are the children. Not in your highest value. In terms of driver's license, yes. Children don't get driver's license. That's not your highest value to be able to drive a car. Your highest value has to apply to children.
Rabbi Friedman, this is another snub that we've been getting for the longest time, that it's bad for women to have so many children, how some Hasidic families have 10 and above children, and that it's hard on a woman's body. It's hard for a woman to take care and nurse so many children, and then takes a toll on her health. So that's one of the concerns of the secular world as far as treatment for the observant religious. And it's not just in Judaism that if you're religious, you have a lot of children. It's in basically anybody observant does.
Yeah. I'm not sure how sincere that argument is, because it seems to me, just from a distance, women work out intensely. Women are very concerned with their health, with their strength, with their well-being. Is it true the healthiest of women are the ones who have the least amount of children? So if you're worried, you want to have children, but you're afraid that it's going to affect your health, then the healthiest should be having the most children. It's not happening. But what you're saying is very true. In Jewish culture, because women were having children, women were given preferential treatment. Be careful with your health. Be careful of a pregnant woman's health. Be careful of a mother's health, because she's drained. It took a lot out of her to have that child. Where's the community? Where's the village? One woman complained, in Judaism, women are pampered as if they're babies. Why do women always have to have special attention, special consideration? Because they're having children. You're not having children, so you don't get any special attention. But yes, if you expect a woman to have 10 children, you better create a lifestyle and a support system that makes it safe and healthy. That would be beautiful. Now everybody is participating in the birth of a child. Yes, it takes a village, not to raise a child, just to give birth to a child. So there's a certain coldness and indifference. Look at these women having all these kids, and look how sick they are. What, are you happy about that? So what are you doing to help? Well, tell them not to have so many kids. That's your solution? Cut out life so that you can have a perfectly comfortable existence? Where's the value? Where's the humanity there? In the olden days, you were so respectful and so careful and so helpful to a woman who was pregnant. Today, we have no such sensitivity. It's sad.
Rabbi Friedman, any idea why the immorality of the world exploded in the last 100 years more than ever?
Birth control. The objectification of sex, of women, of intimacy, of people. The most humane aspects of our existence has been exploited. Sex sells, and that's what it's used for. Stripped of all its humanity, stripped of all of its beauty, stripped of all of its intimacy, it's reduced to mechanical, functional selling points. And it's taken all the humanity out of us. Having babies is an embarrassment, a sin, a crime against humanity. We have to control the population, maybe even diminish the population actively. There are people who consider these things. Very rich people. Yeah, we've lost our humanity. And it all began in the bedroom. First, you undermine the beauty and the value and the sanctity of life. So the bedroom is no longer about making babies. It just became about making love. And they took the love out of it. And it became just about physical pleasure. That got to be a little boring, so we need a little variety on the theme. Now we got to do some things a little weirder to make it interesting. Where are we going with this?
I'm afraid to ask.
Yeah. Thankfully, we have a built-in regulator. We're going to hit a wall and bounce back. Because we cannot completely lose our humanity. Our humanity will not allow us to completely destroy our humanity. And primarily, women. Women will stop the process. Women will put down their foot and say, that's it, I'm going no further. No more. It's always been that way. I don't know how far men can go in their depravity, because women never let us go that far.
Is there an explanation why women are always more sensible? I guess the conclusion would be than men.
In the story of creation, to make a long story short, men were created with the opportunity to be as evil can get, and with the strength to fight that evil and not only refuse it, but actually refine it. Women were not created for that purpose. Women were not created with the capacity for evil that men have. Women were created with the opposite. Women were created with the capacity for goodness that is extreme. So men have the capacity to be extremely evil. That's a challenge. Women have the capacity to be extremely moral. That's a challenge too. You get overly righteous, it's not good. So there's the balance. When women get to be overly righteous, the men are there to introduce a little sinning. And when men become overly evil, women are there to say, enough already. Stop. Be a mensch.
Rabbi Friedman, I came across a letter from the Rabbi from about 70 years ago when he wasn't even the Rabbi of Chabad then, I guess, and with a very big emphasis on the fact when Israel was just formed to have a strong education system for women there. Of course, he meant religious education and not only religious education. And I don't know if our listeners know this. We have said this before, but I just want to reiterate that you have an enormous, very big, very famous school for girls, yeshiva for girls, Beis Hana, and you have made it your life work to educate women. Why do you think Rabbi made such an emphasis at that particular time? And where has it taken the religious Jewish women since those times to now?
If you want to guarantee a Jewish future, who should you educate first, the men or the women? The women. The women. You have a religious man who is educated, who is knowledgeable, who is devout, but his wife is not. Which way are the children going to go?
Right.
It's not going to be good. If the mother is educated, if the mother is inspired, if the mother is the knowledgeable one, even if the father is not, chances are the children will be good. So the education of women, far more crucial to the future of Judaism than the education of men.
Then, of course, the natural question would be, why wasn't it so through the ages and became more so again in the last century?
It really was through the ages, but women were educated by their mothers, by their grandmothers, not in schools. Men went off to schools, to yeshivas. And the yeshiva gained more and more power in Jewish life. So now there was an imbalance. Men were getting educated far more than women because of the yeshiva system. So the Rebbe encouraged women's yeshivas. If you're not getting an adequate education from your mother or grandmother, because you don't live next to your mother anymore, and your grandmother lives in a different country and you never even get to see her, no, that's not good. So the Rebbe said now, because families are so divided, women have to be educated in a structure like a yeshiva, formal, which is sad. It was much better when mothers and grandmothers did the education, but that's not happening. So for a generation or two, women's education was neglected. They were not living with their grandmother and with their mother, and they also weren't going to yeshiva. So this could not work. Something had to be done.
Rabbi Friedman, but
the interesting result is that not only are the children more likely to follow in a Jewish path if the mother is educated, the husband is more likely to.
Seems to be the pattern, for sure. But Rabbi Friedman, for a very, very long time, and I would even say until a couple of 100 years ago, women were not allowed to study Kabbalah at all.
Neither were men.
Is it encouraged now?
Yes, completely open. But again, that's not our highest value. Study of Kabbalah is not the highest value in Jewish life. So if anybody is left out, it's no big tragedy. The higher the value, the more universal it must be. Otherwise, it's not really a high value, and it's discriminating. So there's something wrong with your values if it doesn't involve everybody. Besides the fact that it's not nice. So what is the highest value in Jewish life?
Family?
Yes, without any question. Family. So who does that exclude? Let's see. It excludes your neighbor's wife. It excludes adultery. That's what it excludes. No one is excluded. The reason you're not allowed to be intimate with your neighbor's wife is because you're messing up her family.
Not yours?
Well, yeah, even if you're not married.
Rabbi Friedman, another snub the religious community gets is that we're not very into secular education. That and therefore that makes us less functioning in the world. Which today I would say is a good thing. I don't know.
It turns out that we were ahead of the curve. Today, if you're not college educated, you're more likely to get rich.
Mm-hmm.
So formal education as a means for making a living, not a good idea. Unless you want to be part of a certain profession. Well, that's always been the case. Way back in the olden days, if you wanted to be a blacksmith, you went to a blacksmith and you apprenticed and you learned. If you wanted to be a healer, you went to the healers and you learned about the herbs and you became a healer. That hasn't changed. But to say the only way you're going to be successful in life is if you get an education on subjects that you're never going to hear about again, give me a break. It never made sense in the first place. So if you're educating yourself for the sake of education, because you want to be a professor, which is the only thing that a university can produce successfully, is a professor. Because the business world, the market changes with every generation. So whatever was useful for your grandfather in terms of making a living is not going to work for you. The world has changed. So the only thing that a university can predictably, consistently produce is a professor. If that's what you want to be, then that's where you go. Universities are professor-making machines. Other than that, use your imagination, use your ingenuity, your entrepreneurial skills, and make a lot more money than any professor can ever make.
So the knowledge of physics and math and chemistry are not so important in our everyday life?
No.
Well, with all the college education, I see cashiers are relying on machines to calculate the change. So I don't know what's happening today with that.
And it's much more efficient.
Rabbi Friedman, the last 100 years have been, even a little more than that, have been seriously intense. Seriously intense.
What?
Intense. Very intense in how the world has changed, evolved, denigrated. I don't know. We can use a lot of adjectives. But judging of how things are escalating and speeding up, what do you think we have to look forward to in the next 100 years or so?
Yeah, let's keep a balance. The last 100 years have been very dramatic. Dramatically evil, unthinkably, unprecedentedly evil. They've also been dramatically unprecedented good. People live longer, fewer people are hungry, there's far less discrimination, or at least the tolerance for it has diminished. Human beings are much better off today than they were 50 years ago. Much better off. Can't ignore that. We can't look only on the negative side and decide whether things are good or bad. If you want to know whether they're good or bad, look at both sides. So these last 100 years have been the best of times and the worst of times. I like the best of times.
Well, people still kind of miss those best of times and hoping for their return.
We are not content with all the goodness in the world. We are not content, and we shouldn't be. Because as long as anything is not ideal, we should not settle. Does that sound unrealistic? So what? So we'll do the unrealistic. Who cares? Now, it's only unrealistic until it happens. Once it happens, it's very realistic. So, no, we're not content. Definitely not. In fact, the better things become, the more we realize how good they can still be. So it whets our appetite for more goodness. I think that's what you're reflecting. No matter how good the last 100 years was, definitely not good enough.
Well, hopefully we can make the next ones way better.
Not the next 100 years, the next week.
Okay, let's concentrate on that. And Rabbi Friedman, just want to report that as of this week, we did launch Good News every half an hour on the hour, and we're going to just try to make it as good as possible. So thank you very much for that good suggestion, and we implemented it, and we're grateful to you for it.
So let me give you a little good news. A survey, a 32-year survey, has come to the conclusion that it is not love that keeps couples together. It's respect. Welcome to the real world. That is good news.
That is. Thank you very much.
We are finally being disabused of this love mania. No, it's respect that keeps couples together. Love often comes between them.
Well, I think that should take a lot of stress off families. and relationships. Thank you very much. Rabbi Friedman, as always, thank you very much for the enlightenment, for the knowledge, for the good news, and for everything that you're doing on an everyday basis. And thank you for this time that you are so graciously allocating to us once a week. Thank you so much.
It's pure indulgence. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you very much.